In 1966, Hollywood didn't reach for the stars. It dove inside the human body. Fantastic Voyage turned science into surreal art, blending Cold War tension with microscopic wonder. Behind its glowing arteries and futuristic machines, chaos ruled the set. A film that redefined sci-fi and nearly destroyed its own cast. Let's explore 16 weird facts about this cinematic experiment. Fact 1. The crow that stole a submarine. During production of Fantastic Voyage, one of the miniature Proteus submarines, delicate, hand-built models worth thousands, mysteriously vanished from the studio lot. Panic swept through the effects team. Without it, entire shots would be impossible. Hours later, the culprit was spotted. A crow struggling to take off with a shiny mini-sub, clutched in its claws. The bird, apparently dazzled by the reflective surface, had swooped down and stolen it straight from the prop table. Crew members chased it across the lot until the exhausted crow dropped its treasure somewhere behind the soundstage. The bizarre theft became an inside joke on set that the first ship to go rogue in Fantastic Voyage wasn't sabotaged by spies or science, but by a bird with a taste for movie history. Fact 2. A submarine in every size. To make the Proteus look believable as it navigated the human bloodstream, filmmakers had to build the submarine in multiple sizes. There was a massive full-scale version for interior shots with the actors, a mid-sized 5-foot model for close-ups, and a tiny 18-inch miniature for the wide visual effects sequences. Some scenes even used a 3-inch version suspended on wires during the shrinking sequence. Every rivet, window, and panel had to match perfectly between models. If a scratch or smudge appeared on one, it was duplicated across all versions for consistency. The process was slow, obsessive, and incredibly expensive, but the illusion it created was seamless. On screen, audiences never noticed the switches. They saw only one perfect vessel gliding through the body's crimson labyrinth, a triumph of 1960s craftsmanship and movie magic. Fact 3. A soundtrack with no melody. Most sci-fi films of the 1960s used sweeping orchestras and heroic themes, but Fantastic Voyage went in the opposite direction. Composer Leonard Rosenman abandoned melody entirely, creating an eerie, dissonant score filled with clashing notes, irregular pulses, and unsettling silences. The music didn't guide emotions, it distorted them. Every sound was meant to mimic the chaos inside the human body, throbbing heartbeats, electrical surges, and nerve impulses firing in the dark. Studio executives initially hated it, calling it too strange for audiences, but director Richard Fleischer insisted on keeping it. By the film's end, when a faint hint of melody finally emerged, it felt like the first breath after suffocation. Rosenman's score didn't just accompany the movie, it became its bloodstream, pulsing with dread and wonder in equal measure. Fact 4. The book that came after the movie. Most fans assume Fantastic Voyage was adapted from a novel by Isaac Asimov, but it was actually the other way around. The movie came first. The book came later. The studio hired Asimov to write a novelization of the screenplay before the film was even released, hoping to use his name for publicity. Asimov, a master of scientific logic, was baffled by the script's inconsistencies, especially the unanswered question of what happened to the Proteus left inside the patient. Refusing to ignore it, he rewrote the ending for his version, dissolving the submarine before it could expand and destroy the host. His fix gave the story coherence the movie never bothered with. Ironically, Asimov's book outsold the film's original release, leaving audiences convinced the movie was based on his story, not the other way around. Fact 5. The acid that ate the wires. Filming the bloodstream sequences of Fantastic Voyage looked graceful on screen, but behind the scenes, it was a dangerous balancing act. The actors were suspended by thin metal wires against glowing red backdrops to simulate floating inside arteries. Unfortunately, the wires reflected too much light, breaking the illusion of weightlessness. The solution? The effects crew coated them with acid to dull the shine. It worked, but the acid also weakened the wires, making them brittle. During filming, several began to corrode mid-scene, threatening to snap as actors dangled meters above the set floor. The team had to halt shooting repeatedly to replace them. What appeared serene and dreamlike on screen was, in reality, a high-risk stunt. The cast floated through the bloodstream, unaware how close they came to plunging out of the human body entirely. Fact 6. The movie that went to medical school. Long after Fantastic Voyage left theaters, Its impact traveled far beyond Hollywood. During the 1970s and 1980s, medical schools across the U.S. began using clips from the film in anatomy and biology classes. Professors found that the movie's surreal visuals, glowing blood cells, pulsating veins, and swirling plasma helped students remember human anatomy better than textbook diagrams. Even though the science was largely fictional, the imagery made abstract biology tangible. It turned science fiction into an unexpected teaching tool. For many students, this was the first time they saw the human body as a vast, living world. Fantastic Voyage wasn't just entertainment. It quietly bridged cinema and science, inspiring future doctors and researchers to explore the real mysteries that lay beneath the skin. Fact 7. The spy hidden in the science. When the original Fantastic Voyage script reached 20th Century Fox, executives feared that pure science might not hold 1960s audiences. Their solution, espionage. Cold War paranoia was everywhere, so writers added spies, secret missions, and sabotage. Suddenly, what began as a medical experiment became part sci-fi, part spy thriller. The film opens not in a lab, but with a scientist escaping enemy agents, instantly setting the tone of tension and mystery. The mix of science and secrecy kept viewers on edge, grounding the fantasy in real-world fears of infiltration and betrayal. It wasn't just about saving a man's life, it was about saving knowledge itself. Even at microscopic size, the Cold War still loomed large, proof that in 1966, no adventure, however small, could escape the shadow of global paranoia. Fact 8. The organs that swallowed the cast. To create the illusion of traveling through the human body, Fantastic Voyage built some of the most surreal sets in movie history. Massive arteries made of translucent plastic stretched across entire sound stages, glowing under pulsating lights. The brain set was a maze of fiber optics and gels that shimmered like living tissue. But beauty came at a price. The actors were drenched daily in fake plasma made of glycerin, oil, and red dye. The air was thick, the floors slick, and the heat unbearable under studio lamps. Raquel Welch later described it as being trapped inside a fever dream. Yet, the result was hypnotic, a microscopic world that felt organic, alive, and slightly horrifying. Few sets ever looked so alien or so human. Fact 9. The director who knew the body by heart. Director Richard Fleischer wasn't just another filmmaker handed a sci-fi script. He once studied pre-med before turning to cinema. That background shaped every detail of Fantastic Voyage. He didn't want the inside of the body to look like outer space painted red. He wanted it to feel biological. Fleischer worked closely with medical illustrators, using microscope images of real tissues as design references. Every artery pulsed, every surface shimmered like living skin. He pushed for an unsettling beauty, part science, part nightmare. His approach gave the film an authenticity few sci-fi movies achieved at the time. While other directors looked outward to the stars, Fleischer looked inward, proving that the human body itself could be the most mysterious alien world of all. Fact 10. The most expensive sci-fi film of its time. When Fantastic Voyage began production, it carried a price tag that shocked Hollywood, over $6 million, making it the most expensive science fiction film ever made at the time. Just a few years earlier, 20th Century Fox had nearly gone bankrupt after Cleopatra, but the studio still gambled on this microscopic adventure. Custom sets, massive lighting rigs, and revolutionary optical effects devoured the budget. Each glowing artery and drop of plasma cost more than some full movies. The risk paid off. The film became a hit, earning 2 Academy Awards for art direction and visual effects. Before 2001, A Space Odyssey or Star Wars, Fantastic Voyage set the standard for visual sci-fi spectacle. It proved that science fiction could be ambitious, intelligent, and breathtaking, even when the universe it explored was smaller than a cell. Fact 11. The myth inside the name Proteus. The submarine at the heart of Fantastic Voyage wasn't named by chance. Proteus comes from Greek mythology, a sea god who could change shape at will to escape capture. It was the perfect symbol for a vessel built to shrink, adapt, and survive in a constantly changing environment. The name echoed the film's deeper theme, transformation. Every character in the story, from the scientists to the miniaturized crew, undergoes a form of change, physical, moral, or spiritual. The Proteus wasn't just a ship. It was a metaphor for humanity's endless urge to evolve and control the unknown. Most viewers in 1966 missed the reference, but for those who caught it, the choice added a poetic layer to the story, one where mythology met science in the depths of the human bloodstream. Fact 12. The 1-hour journey trick. Hidden within Fantastic Voyage is a clever piece of storytelling symmetry that most audiences never noticed. Once the Proteus and its crew are miniaturized and injected into the scientist's bloodstream, their mission, to repair his brain, lasts almost exactly 1 hour of real screen time. That wasn't a coincidence. Director Richard Fleischer structured the film so the audience's sense of time matched the characters' desperate countdown before they returned to full size. Each minute inside the body equals 1 minute for viewers, creating a subtle, real-time tension that builds unconsciously. By the time the crew finally escapes, both they and the audience feel the same relief, as though they've survived the voyage together. It's one of cinema's earliest and smartest uses of pacing as storytelling. Fact 13. The shrinking sequence and the missing ending. The most iconic moment in Fantastic Voyage, the shrinking of the Proteus, was created entirely with practical effects. No computers, no digital tricks. The team built progressively smaller models of the submarine, from 5 feet down to just 3 inches, and filmed each with changing lighting and camera speeds to make it look like one continuous transformation. Smoke, lens flares, and optical overlays sold the illusion. But there was one detail the filmmakers ignored. What happened to the Proteus? Left inside the patient. By all logic, it should have grown back to full size, instantly killing him. The movie cuts to credits before anyone can ask. Isaac Asimov, frustrated by the oversight, fixed the problem in his novelization, dissolving the ship before expansion. His ending gave science fiction the logic Hollywood forgot. Fact 14. The scene that nearly hospitalized Raquel Welch. One of Fantastic Voyage's most famous moments, Raquel Welch, trapped by swarming antibodies, turned into a real-life nightmare. The antibodies were balloon-like props, coated in a sticky organic goo meant to glisten under the studio lights. But the substance wasn't harmless movie slime. It was made from real food proteins and enzymes. Under the hot lamps, it began to rot, releasing fumes and triggering a severe allergic reaction. Welch was trapped inside the sticky mess for hours, unable to move, while the crew poked at the props from off-camera. She eventually broke out in painful hives, forcing production to halt until she recovered. Ironically, that dangerous sequence became one of the film's most iconic visuals, a symbol of both beauty and chaos, where fiction and real discomfort collided on set. Fact 15. The sequel that never shrunk. After Fantastic Voyage became a box office hit, 20th Century Fox immediately began planning a sequel. Early drafts imagined new microscopic adventures, not inside a human, but through animal or even alien bodies. Concept artists designed bizarre new submarines and glowing cellular landscapes. But as production costs rose and key crew members moved on, the project collapsed. For decades, the idea resurfaced under different titles, like Fantastic Voyage 2 and Microcosm. Even James Cameron was attached to a modern remake, yet every version fizzled before cameras rolled. The reason? The original's mix of Cold War intrigue and analog wonder was impossible to replicate. Half a century later, Fantastic Voyage remains both a completed film and an unfinished promise, proof that some cinematic experiments are too strange, too ambitious, to ever happen twice. Fact 16. A legacy science almost caught up to. Nearly 60 years after its release, Fantastic Voyage still feels like a dream, science almost made real. In 1966, the idea of shrinking humans to explore the body was pure fantasy. Today, nanotechnology and microscopic surgery echo that same vision. The film's glowing arteries and drifting cells inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and filmmakers alike. Its imagery appeared in classrooms, documentaries, and even NASA concept art. But beyond the visuals, its true legacy lies in imagination, the courage to ask, what if? Long before the tools existed to answer. Fantastic Voyage proved that science fiction isn't just prediction, it's inspiration. The movie that once shrank its heroes into the unknown ended up expanding our sense of what science and cinema could dare to dream. Fantastic Voyage wasn't just a film. It was a bold experiment that blended science, suspense, and surreal imagination. It turned the human body into a universe and made audiences see wonder beneath their own skin. From melting wires to mythic submarines, it pushed 1960s filmmaking beyond reason. Decades later, it still pulses with life, a reminder that exploration doesn't always mean reaching for the stars. Sometimes, the greatest journey is the one that happens within.